Okay, and thank you so much for listening and joining in. As we had said earlier in the program, we are joined by Wesam Cooley. And as for a bio, Wesam is an activist and a non-practicing solicitor, qualified in England and Wales, has been a supporter of the Palestinian Liberation Movement for over 15 years, and is presently an organizer with Justice for Palestinians Calgary. Hello, Wesam. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for taking this time. So, Wesam, recently we heard on the news here in Vancouver that you got into a bit of trouble organizing a rally in Calgary, and I guess I wanted to talk with you about a number of things that have come out as a result of that, but perhaps I can ask you to begin with by sharing a little bit of information around why, or can you draw a line for us as to why a phrase that was routinely used and chanted in Canada, out here in British Columbia. I often remember going to rallies where we would say, from BC to Palestine, occupation is a crime. We would say, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. But these days, it seems that this phrase has become really, really problematic. And for somebody that has experienced, let me just let listeners know again that you were at a rally, you uttered these phrases and ultimately got in trouble. I will just put that in quotes for now. Can you maybe draw this line for us?
Yeah, well, like you say, it's a chant that has been used for decades for as an expression of the desire for freedom for the people of Palestine. You'll have to ask the people demonizing it for their own reasons. I have my suspicions. The phrase "from the river to the sea," it's a call for freedom, but it does pose some uncomfortable questions that people who support the Israeli state don't want to answer. It is a geographical designation. It says "from the river to the sea." That's from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. Palestine will be free. The implication being that in the entirety of that land right now, there is not freedom for the people of Palestine. And so that poses the question, because within that territory is the state of Israel. And so it poses the question of, the legitimacy of that state, of the kind of oppression that state enforces on the people of Palestine. And I think that's an uncomfortable question. It's basically an article of faith in the Western world that Israel has a right to exist and they're not allowed to question it. But, I think the question that should be being posed is, what kind of a state is Israel to begin with? What kind of a state is Israel? Because, you got to start there. And frankly, when you look at the history, you see that, Israel presents itself as a Jewish state, but it's more than that, really. It's a Zionist state. That is, it's the realization of the Zionist political movement, which, Zionism was historically a political movement, not representative of Jewish people as a whole, and actually, for much of its history, was very marginal, its support among Jewish people. But it's a political movement that aspires to establish a Jewish state in the land of Palestine, a land that was already inhabited by non-Jews, predominantly by non-Jews. And how do you establish a Jewish state in a land inhabited predominantly by non-Jews? Well, there's only one way, and that's with overwhelming violence and ethnic cleansing. And Israel's early leaders understood this perfectly well. I can give you a quote here from an early director of the Jewish National Fund. I don't know if your listeners will know about the Jewish National Fund. It was an early body that basically, from an early director of the Jewish National Fund, which was a body for colonizing Palestine. This is what he said in the years before Israel was established. He said, "It must be clear that there is no room in the country for both peoples. The only solution is a land of Israel without Arabs. There is no room here for compromise. way but to transfer the Arabs from here to the neighboring countries and to transfer all of them, save perhaps a few. And, that's talking about ethnic cleansing. And the Jewish National Fund still exists, by the way. It has an office here in Calgary. So, that is the only way Israel could have been established. And since that time, it has maintained itself as a Jewish state by continuing to deny the rights of the Palestinians, continuing to deny the rights of refugees to return, and continuing to deny the right of Palestinians to a state or to statehood or to citizenship or any of that. I mean, it's an important thing here because, among other things, one thing that's worth noting that not many people are talking about, Gaza's population, which is under genocidal conditions right now, over 2/3 of that population before October 7th, before all this happened, are refugees or the descendants of refugees who themselves were expelled from the land that is now Israel to make room for the Jewish state. So that makes up more than 2/3 of Gaza's population. Mm-hmm. So really, I mean, when we say from the river to the sea, it raises these uncomfortable questions, and they're very uncomfortable for the Zionist movement. And that's why I think this phrase in particular has been targeted.
So, Wesam, can you tell us about what the rally was on in Calgary and then the fallout? How was that organized, first of all, by you all, and what happened to you specifically?
Yeah, well, we've been organizing protests every Sunday since this genocide began in Gaza. We've been communicating with police the whole time. That day that we arrived, that was 2 Sundays ago, on the 5th. The police told me, told a few of us when we arrived, that the province of Alberta was looking at classifying that phrase, from the river to the sea, as hate speech. But that, and we asked were there going to be any arrests on that day related to the use of that phrase, and the police told us no. Might be investigations later, but no arrests today. And we had actually set up we were talking about setting up a meeting for us to speak to one of the hate crimes advisors within, I believe it was the Calgary Police Service. So we were under the assumption that there was going to be no repercussion for us using the phrase that week. And obviously we have strong objections to it being classified as hate speech in any case. Well, we went ahead and did the march, did the demonstration. We used the phrase. I led the crowd in the phrase. I was emceeing the march. After the event, I was going home. Was waiting on the City Hall train platform with my mom and dad and sister, and a few police officers showed up on bikes, told me I'm under arrest for causing a disturbance, and I was taken down to the police station. I was told at first that the charge was then being changed to hate speech, and then later when they were releasing me, they told me it was being changed back to causing a disturbance. And the actual charge that I was charged with was the disturbance was, quote, shouting offensive anti-Semitic comments. And I asked the officer in custody, I asked him, what was the comment? And he told me it was from the river to the sea. And I asked, anything else? And he said no. So that was explicitly, that was what I was charged with, basically. I mean, a big attack on the rights of freedom of speech of everyone who stands with Palestine. And yeah, the consequences on me have been pretty bad. I mean, a lot of the media, if you Google my name right now, I'm pretty much like an arch anti-Semite according to a lot of the media. For saying what? For saying a call for freedom for the people of Palestine. Yeah, I mean, it's been a really tough time for me personally, just, being arrested. I've never been arrested before, so that's a whole ordeal in itself. And it's been difficult on my family being, sort of in the public eye in this way and getting all of this negative attention. And, we're glad the charges have been stayed now. We would have liked them to have been dropped, but they've been stayed. And I'm allowed to attend the protests again. The conditions of my release at the time before they were stayed was I'm not allowed to attend or organize any demonstrations. So, again, not exactly, glowing democratic values in action here, but, so that is what it is. But bottom line is there's still a genocide going on in Gaza, and, we need to be doing everything in our power to put an end to it. And I'm not going to stop doing everything I can to organize the demonstrations against it.
So, Wesam, you alluded to some of the difficulties and some of the consequences that you are facing because of this. I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the other side, what kind of support you have had as well, if any, and also if you want to make any other comments around this issue, for example, where listeners or interested people might learn more about what you are going through or what you are saying or the organization itself, as well as if you have a moment, if you wanted to reflect on how you feel the framing has been in the mainstream media for your particular case.
Sure. Well, firstly, the support from the community has been incredible. I've really been overwhelmed by the support that has been shown from across the Muslim community, the Palestinian community, and just generally the activist community and community of people who are opposed to this genocide. There's been a ton of messages of support. A lot of people putting out on their social media that they're outraged about the arrest. There was a campaign with I believe it was over 11,000 letters were sent in relation to my arrest, protesting, saying that the charges should be dropped. So I've been overwhelmed by that support, and it's not surprising to see, because in a sense, this is affecting me personally, but at the same time, this is an attack on the entire movement, and that's a movement that right now is trying to stop a genocide. So people are already livid about that genocide, and they are absolutely in support of anyone who's helping to try and build that movement. In terms of the framing in the mainstream media, I must say I'm not particularly happy with it. There are some media agencies who reported my story without even saying what the phrase was, who just sort of put it out there as an anti-Semitic chant. And that to me is unacceptable, because that changes the whole story. If you don't tell people what the chant was, and you just say this guy was arrested for making an anti-Semitic chant, that the police, it was so bad that the police arrested him, and, we're not even willing to repeat it. That gives a certain framing to the issue. Whereas if you tell people this was a chant from the river to the sea, then the story is this guy went up and said something totally inoffensive and was bafflingly arrested. It changes the whole thing. So I've not been happy with that framing. This entire effort to paint the pro-Palestinian movement as somehow anti-Semitic is really damaging. And one thing that I noticed that the media rarely ever reports is that we have quite a significant amount of Jewish support for this movement. In Calgary, we have independent Jewish voices. They're actually a Canadian organization. They've been supporting these protests every week. They have a speaker on our platform every week. I know that in the United States, there are organizations like Jewish Voice for Peace that have been organizing enormous demonstrations, many of them risking arrest in support of Palestine right now. So that's also very much mischaracterized in pretty much all of the mainstream media. It's rarely ever talked about that there's enormous Jewish support for the Palestinian cause as well. And lastly, in terms of where people can find our work, I'm a member of Justice for Palestinians. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. All of our work goes up there, and our statements and stuff, so you can follow our work there. And we've also got footage of the protests and all that. People are interested in seeing what's going on in Calgary.
Okay, Wesam Cooley, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk with us, and we wish you the best of luck. And perhaps if you're okay with it, we can reach with you down the road and see how you're doing.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much. Okay, and so stay tuned. We are going to be coming right back and speaking with Jeremy Apple about what Palestinian Canadians are going through currently in terms of how they are being disciplined in their work areas, their workspaces, for what they are saying. Stay tuned.